Welcome to Studio Yutani. We're still reviewing by Wolves 6 and 7 today. And I'm Connor Colson of Prometheus by Minute and Alien Covenant and Tron Legacy and so many other things. Oh, Robocop. I'm doing lots of movies by minutes. It's just spiraled out of control in the last few weeks.
You gotta stop taking on projects. You have to finish what you started.
I do finish what I started, but also I just say yes to everything, and I cannot stop. Please help. And I am joined once more by Mother, aka Clara, but not that Mother from Raised by Wolves. Got different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like I'm going to be flying anywhere soon and destroying people with my eyes.
Yeah. I wonder if we're going to be seeing any Raised by Wolves cosplayers whenever the apocalypse stops.
They would have to be very brave.
Yeah.
Like I'm all for like anybody can cosplay, but like it's just the commitment to get into a suit of that type.
Yes.
I don't know out there has worn full latex before, but it's a pretty big thing to try to get into.
Yes. I guess some people might use spandex. These days, actually, spandex is pretty good because you can get that leather look stuff. So you could.
And I was wondering why the hell they didn't do that for Raised by Wolves.
I know. There's so many things about these costumes I don't understand in terms of just creating structure and conforming to the body and not making them look like they're stretched out noodle people. Especially Mother. She already has a weird noodly body. So. If there was a bit more structure and corseting and a bra and, all that sort of stuff so built in. But anyway, I've already bitched about the costumes enough. And yet, the actual necromancer, I know that's all digital, but like that, the necromancer body, it conforms, it looks very structured, and yet it's just digital. So I guess they can cheat, but come on, guys.
Yeah. Look, like let's look past the costumes for now.
Yes, we are watching and reviewing episode 6, which is called Lost Paradise. And Jesus Christ, Ridley Scott, if you want to do an adaptation of Paradise Lost, just do a fucking Paradise Lost movie. No one's stopping you. No one's done it before. Please do.
I wonder how much control the director and writer had to write these episodes and whether they were seeking the appraisal from Ridley and Aaron Kaczynski, because honestly it seems very Ridley heavy, but when we listen to the podcast, the Raised by Wolves one, the official one, like Ridley is not really mentioned at all, and it's all about the writing and the influences, and maybe his vision is not solely his. Maybe it's a shared one.
Like his impression style, his fingerprints, they're all over Raised by Wolves. So I do feel like he was probably overseeing everything and kind of guiding it in a certain direction.
Especially if he was like the storyboard artist for the entire series.
Yeah.
Then I would understand why aesthetically everything kind of shouts Ridley Scott,
Yeah, because Aaron G, I can never pronounce his surname, but
Kaczynski.
Is it Kaczynski? Yeah, so okay, God, there's John Krasinski, there's Joe Kaczynski, there's Aaron Kaczynski. I'm gonna try and keep that straight, but I make promises. So
let's call him Guz.
Yeah. I think we looked up what he'd done before that. Do you remember? I can't remember.
Yeah, so Kaczynski has done...
Say that the synopsis for this episode is, after rekindling her connection to her creator, Mother finds herself distracted by intense feelings she didn't know she was capable of having. And aware that Marcus, Sue, and in the Mythrake are closing in on the settlement.
So he's done things like Papillon, The Red Road, Prisoners, and Contraband.
That's right, yes. I think I actually even looked it up last night when I was doing my notes, just straight out of my head. So it's not like he has one particular fixation the way Ridley Scott does on these themes. So I think if I had to guess, I'd probably say he was coming to it with the whole mother and father raising children aspect, and then all the other Prometheus stuff. That's Ridley coming along. Go, what if we did this? I can't say specifics because of spoilers, but you know what I mean.
I think he may have been a fan of Ridley's stuff. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do a partnership. So,
True.
you know, like Ridley did want his movie style to be away from aliens, and like this is a way to do it. I can't say I agree with it, but it's interesting to see how different sort of aspects that we are familiar with in the alien universe and alien community are exposed to, and how they've kind of flipped and played out in this Raised by Wolves universe.
Yeah, and well, I guess we get more into that when those themes and images and stuff come up, but just how something can work in one story but then feel totally disconnected in another. And I think, well, given that this is a first season of a mystery story, I will give it a little slack, but there are some things where I just go, how does that connect to anything thematically? But we'll get into that.
I definitely think that the character is more character-driven story. Like, I feel for every character in this.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And even the ones who have a very minor role to play, like the crispy Richard Branson from earlier on.
Yeah.
You know, he had a part to play, and I think that all of them are doing it quite well. I like kind of like this fall of Marcus that's kind of playing out in front of us. So
yeah, I personally found it very hard to connect to anyone in this story. I didn't feel like they were fully realized. I didn't think they were going through realistic emotional arcs. The only one I like is sweet little Paul. He is a sweet boy. He's making little traps and inventions. He's smart. He's on top of it. He's great. I'd adopt him too.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
I wouldn't murder his parents first, but yeah.
It's interesting how, like, in this sort of society, how someone like that is valued, and depending on their religion and fellowship, and whether he's allowed to do these things. What if Paul was Paulina? Would she be allowed to like create things and talk and, you know, lead and forage? You know, there seems to be some sort of like way that women are held back, like as they are in society and the world, and how they're portrayed in the Mithraic religion.
It does patriarchal society still.
Yeah, so it's just I think it's an easy way to kind of have a look at like the way that we structure things in our world, and how we could stand to make changes, make a difference, and also kind of like question why do we have these decisions, why do we have these rules, and are they important at all, or more important than the individual behind them that is being oppressed by them.
Yeah, as someone who's in the middle of heavy research on a Transformers video essay series in which in one part I will be discussing the patriarchy from the perspective of, like why Optimus Prime is this ultimate patriarchal figure. And anyway, no, talking about the patriarchy is really difficult, and just trying to figure out, why are so many societies structured this way, and why does this seem to be the default, and why even going back to childhood development, the mother is taken for granted, but a father's affection, you got to work for that, and there's that desire to get their approval. So yeah, I think there's a lot of really interesting things to explore there. And I mean, they don't really get into it too much, but it's season 1. I'll give them some leeway there. I don't know if it's really going to criticize it too much, given that this is such a small surviving faction of this society. If there are other survivors, maybe that might change things a little bit more. But yeah, it would be interesting to see some kind of societal upheaval there.
I think this episode in particular brings up a lot of questions about, what is right? Like at the moment, Sue and Marcus, or Mary and Caleb, whichever names you want to use.
I just call them Mary Sue, yeah.
Mary Sue. It depends on what you think is right about them trying to get how far they're willing to go to do it.
Yeah, their morality. I mean, it's a strange thing. They murdered this kid's parents, but they have been raising this kid, and they've been doing a good job of it. So it's sort of like, so that undoes the original murder. I don't. Yeah, if you do like an equally good thing to a bad thing and just phase it out, right? That's how. Another thought I had was, well, not too much of a spoiler, but at the end of this season in particular, but you're already kind of seeing it now. I think we are seeing a shift towards a more matriarchal system. I mean, mother is always more dominant than father. I would actually say their roles are kind of flipped, where father is quite maternal and he is always there. His love is unconditional, whereas mother is this very high-strung, narcissistic, intense psychopath. And so
she's very led by lust, I feel.
yes, and so the children don't really know how to satisfy her a lot of the time, so they're always trying to vie for her affection and her approval. And then, well, yeah, I guess Marcus has already started to go insane at this point. So then Mary Sue has to kind of take over a little bit with the children. So you will see that as the episodes progress. That yeah, we're kind of having a matriarchal shift already.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of in I keep on bringing it up, but in Alien Covenant,
I mean, that's
Daniel,
my line too.
yeah, Daniel's goes into space following her husband Branson, because you know that's what he wanted to do. She wanted to build a new life with him. Sue's kind of following Mars for the same reason. Like, you know, he gave her an opportunity to escape Earth.
Yeah.
And she's following him, but she has no direction. And in a way, she hasn't really chosen for herself. But it's not saying that the choices that are being made for her are wrong either. She's happy to go along with it until, you know, it changes.
I think that's really interesting. And in a way, it almost works as a metaphor for marriage and divorce or loss in a general way that especially not our generation so much, but the last few generations, women basically graduated high school, if that, and then went straight into a marriage and didn't really learn to live independently. You know, my mother is divorced, a lot of her friends are divorced, and it's just astounding that when they suddenly find themselves alone in their 40s or 50s, they're like, oh, I've never had to do, you know, all these things around the house. I've never had to do all these financial things. They just never learned because, again, patriarchal society, it's almost like you go from being under your father's roof to your husband's roof. Obviously, things are changing now, but I almost feel like the situation here and with Daniels is kind of that same thing of, well, you know, you come along with me. I'll take care of everything. Everything that we do is my plan and I'm organizing. It's fine. And then what happens when that male figure disappears? Well, a story, generally.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that I wanted to bring up, having watched this episode, is that like they're kind of like observing mother and father from afar. At this point, the children don't know what to think of their captors. They still want to go back to the life that they had.
Yeah.
They don't understand all of these things that they have to do. Especially Hunter being made to, you know, do things that are below him in his class and his stature. And then also, like, there's Campion, who has been used to being the golden child and the one survivor and being doted on for so long.
Yeah.
Now having to share that attention with everyone.
And he seems like a spoiled kid, let's be honest.
Oh, yeah. Like, you know, a lot of people who are raised in a single household rarely have traits where they can understand that they have to share or they have to, you know, think of others. Maybe that's why we're in the shit in Victoria. You know?
Only children be in politics. But this episode opens with Mother having her little fantasy time with Campion Sturgis, Campion Senior, if you will. And the most significant thing I want to mention is that we get a Blade Runner 2049 kiss, but she is both the simulation and the android at once. So Mother is watching the memory of saying goodbye to Campion, and then she steps inside of herself and kisses Campion. And well, yeah, she goes on to spend a lot of time in the simulation, and I just okay. So a major problem I have with this is just where is this coming from? I don't feel like it's a character arc. It's just sort of she gets this memory. It's like, oh yes, I love you. You're the best in the world. There's no thought process there. It's just yes.
I think what Ridley is trying to say, or Don Joe is trying to say about Mother, is that she is a creation, but despite being a creation and not supposed to have wants or needs, because they've made her more human, she yearns to have that connection with her creator. It yearns to be part of something bigger, even though she doesn't have like a belief system, so to speak.
See, that's the thing. I think on paper that works, and why Blade Runner or the Alien films work is those androids and synthetics and replicants, they have this yearning, they have this longing. There is this sense of thought and character growth and introspection and trying to understand themselves. Whereas Mother is just, no, I'm so logical and practical and sensible and fuck y'all. And she's just, she's basically, she acts like an hysterical person, but also she pretends she's really sensible. So there's no flow there. It's just, bam, I'm this, bam, I'm that. Okay, wow, yeah, my head's spinning now. Where, in a way, I could almost understand it if you say, this is a machine. So if she has this thing triggered where, oh, I have encountered my creator, I have romantic feelings now. That actually makes sense. If they framed it that way, where you're made to think, is this really real? That would be interesting, but it's never really framed that way, or at least I don't feel it's framed that way.
Well, let's bring it back to the scene that it's referencing in Blade Runner 2049. We're talking about an unreal thing, like a simulation of a person with an AI, and then a human person who can satisfy and react to that. That yearning for connection, wanting to have something very similar to what humanity has. She even said that she couldn't really like understand why she's doing these things.
Yeah.
I think what they're trying to tap into, and this is with all the biblical stuff, is, you know, lust, desire, the 7 deadly sins, basically. They've gone through just about every single one.
Yeah.
Well, you know, they ate the animal. That's what you call it?
3?
Yeah. Oh, there's that, and there's one about like gluttony.
Yeah, same one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like pride and is it hubris or avarice? They're synonyms. It's the same thing.
Yeah. And that's the same with Campion. Feeling pride, jealousy, and then like wanting to hurt, kill. Like, yeah, he killed someone.
Yeah, he goes from being the pacifist vegan boy to murderer, I guess.
Yeah, and it's interesting how like all of these things, like, is Ridley kind of saying, can these things be stopped by religion, or are these things completely human that it can't be stopped at all?
Yeah. Oh, actually, that happens in a much later episode, but well, it's kind of referenced around just the idea of these kids raised in isolation and they'll still play war or they'll still play fight, and it's just because that's what human beings evolved to do. It's in DNA. It's like my 2 younger brothers. So my mum wouldn't allow us to have toy guns or anything like that. And inevitably, they would make guns out of anything, kinetic textures, cardboard, toilet paper rolls, whatever they could get their hands on. And so my grandmother eventually just bought them some toy guns and just like, just let them have them. Just, it's going to happen. They're doing it anyway. What are you trying to prove here?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what's with that.
Well, if you look at domesticated animals, their play style is reflective of their way they would hunt. Like your pet dogs and cats will probably never hunt, or they shouldn't be hunting if you're doing it right. And yet their play style is that of a predator. It is chasing, it is pouncing, it is everything that their nature and instinct has told them to do.
Very true. Yeah, it's very Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah. I wish this show was more Kubrickian. That would be quite interesting. But
I think it is in some ways, but probably more Ridley, if anything.
Kind of like The Shining a little bit. Mother definitely reminds me of Jack Nicholson.
Our father does, really.
Yeah,
but we'll get to that in that episode.
Mother grows more paranoid, and she sees these drawings on the wall of the tent structure thing, and it's in Tilly style, or at least she thinks it's in Tilly style. But it's implied that Mother probably was the one that drew them. And well, I can't tell what it's supposed to show, but apparently it's supposed to show that Mother and Campion Sturgis were doing things to that.
Yeah, it looks like two people kissing.
Yeah, I couldn't really make it out.
Well, what did you think about Tempest attempting to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star? Do you think there's any link to Walter in the greenhouse whistling that?
I think the significance of Walter singing or whistling that song is that it's so generic. It is utterly devoid of any meaning. It is interchangeable. It's A, B, C, D, the alphabet song. Blah, blah, Black Sheep, all those songs. It's the same rhythm. They've just used it for several songs. So that's the meaning that applies to Walter. Whereas I think here it's just, well, when you're learning a new instrument, what do you learn to play? Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. When I was learning the violin, that's what you started out with.
Yeah. They're starting small.
Yes.
It's interesting that Mother says to Tempest that like she's not one who wants, she's one who serves. Because it's obvious that like she grows to want things later on.
Yeah, because it's not said in that passive aggressive way that David does, where he's just like, oh yes, I'm just a humble little servant, I would never do a thing. Where Mother genuinely, it's almost like she's saying it to herself, to go, no, I don't want anything, no. No, I just serve. There's nothing going on with me.
Yeah, it's like she's not, as if she's not allowed to.
And Marcus discovers the biobed and he wants to destroy Mother, and I think that's a very clever plot. I think that's I like that. That's pretty. This episode I actually quite enjoyed because and the next one, just in terms of Marcus finally getting the upper hand on Mother and some very clever plots there unraveling, and yeah, it's quite cunning.
Yeah, like it's really interesting how he's kind of using everyone as chess pieces. Even Otho in the helmet.
Yeah. So actually, no, it's in this episode that Paul is rescued by his parents, and then they come up with this plan. They send Paul back, and then he's in the camp with the family, with the kids and Mother. And then he's given a knife by Marcus, and he cuts the bag around Mother's neck, steals the eyes, legs it, and then Marcus attacks Mother, and it's really great, and I love it.
Yeah, it's really like I was just looking at Tally's drawing, and then the view of Campion in the sim with Mother, and he's got this like reflective light coming off him.
Oh yeah.
looks very similar to the drawing, and I wonder if that's on purpose or not. It's very interesting. Anyway.
Maybe. I think he just wanted a sex bot, to be honest, and he just reprogrammed it, and that's what's happening.
It's always coming down to that.
Always does. Can you put your dick in it? Well, that's
yeah. The amount of people that have argued about whether androids have sex or not within the alien universe, and now with raising walls. Yeah. It's... Yeah, we'll get to that one. We'll get to that episode.
Because the concept of whether or not she has a vagine does become quite important in the finale. We'll get into that. That's a certain point in the future.
Yes, it's very interesting. So yes, this trap to get Mother. I got a bit confused about what was happening.
Really?
Because they had done things to the computer to cause a feedback. But what happened to her in regards to what was happening?
Oh, so my interpretation was they were actually draining her power. So they'd sort of reversed, instead of outputting power, it was drawing power in. And I don't know what that weird shield thing does that Otho was holding, but I think that played a part. It wasn't, I don't think they exactly explained it as far as I know. But yeah, that I thought they were draining her power.
Yeah, so... That's okay.
Yeah, taking it back.
Yeah. So... Anyway, I'm having a look at this drawing that Tally had supposedly done. And I think it's predicting the future. The picture, like, Mother misread what she saw. When I look at this side by side with the image of her being tricked in the sim, with the light beams coming off Campion's head, that only happens in the drawing of the picture with her and Campion there.
Yeah.
Because that's not her with the spiky hair, because she didn't have spiky hair.
Yep.
Back then.
It was.
Anyway, I thought it was interesting because we're now introduced to the fact that, okay, there's weird drawings appearing. Could Mother have done them? Could Ghosts have done them?
Yeah, so Tilly there's all these voices that multiple characters are experiencing. So it's not just Marcus. I think Marcus seems to either be affected the most, or he's just it's overwhelming him more than anyone else because he sort of has this guilty conscience. He's being led down into this cult-like path, so he's just very vulnerable. But it's clear to me that there are other forces at play here, that the natives of this planet, as I said before, I think they're the ones who are influencing the events here, and to what end, who can say, and referencing that thing that happens in the finale. I think they kind of knew something. Campion's plan, they got involved, and Campion Sturgis and kind of change things a little bit. We'll get to that when we do. But what that reminds me of is just, myths and stories about, well, especially Greek gods, that they intervene with human affairs. They're very involved, and they're curious, they're petty, they like to mess with people, basically. And I think that's the case here, is that we have this godlike being living on this planet who has supernormal abilities. Maybe they're kind of, that was my theory, I think, in one of the last episodes, where it's just like Akira, where you've got these telepathic people, maybe radiation's evolved, who can say, and they're all mutants, and they've got god powers, basically.
Yeah. It's very strange. Like, everyone keeps on thinking that this thing that's happening to them, whether it's being able to see Tally the ghost hear voices in their head, set people on fire, or have sex in a simulation seems to be all the work of God. I kept on thinking when I was watching this episode, what if it wasn't God? What if it's the work of the devil? Or their version of the devil?
That's always the sort of related, but that idea of angels' true appearance they tend to present themselves as they truly are, with multiple eyes and wings and shit. Whereas no, demons tend to come in a nice, appealing package. They deceive you. So, and just wondering if they're kind of playing with those sorts of themes in this story. Although, given the thing that happens in episode 10. Pulled a sharp right turn there, but we will get to that. It's so hard to talk. I wish I hadn't watched. Honestly, I wish I had not watched ahead because we missed a week, and so I just thought, well, maybe we'll watch the whole thing. No, Connor, what have you done? But I will say
it's interesting. Like, so going on this, sex in a simulation. Everyone's asking the big question: does she have a cooch?
Yeah, and well, now I can't reference episode 10. So, no, I think going with Ridley Scott logic, all these androids, they want sex. They're so longing to be human and do the sex, even though not every human does the sex. So it's probably true. In this simulation, she gets to fulfill that fantasy of getting that D and give a straight face. Yeah, so only in this fantasy world can she truly satisfy her needs. Ironically, within the artificial construct, she is able to be more real, quote unquote real, than she is in the real world.
It's really interesting. Like, I'm looking at all the symbolism now, even like the pod and like the wreckage. It just looks like a penis.
It's always got to be the penis. I'm really curious to know what the YouTube auto subtitles are going to say. If I say penis and I say vagine, what do they think I'm saying? I don't know. So I just can't wait.
Find out.
We'll find out.
So, like, I don't know about you, but when Marcus goes up to Mother and he's about to touch her, it kind of reminds me of Snow White asleep in the forest.
Yeah, there's definitely a fairy tale quality there, I'd say.
Yeah, and also it scared shit out of me. Like, I've never felt afraid of Mother until it was his life, kind of in the balance of like, maybe I should like check if she can feel me, sense me. No, she can't. And the whole time I was going like, fuck.
Really? Yeah, no. I mean, normally I just think she's horribly terrifying at all times. So
I think she's cuddly.
We have a very different response to this show, and that's what makes this review work, I feel.
So the sex scene, the art style of it.
It's kind of art nouveau.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of, what's that direct scenes or artistic sex scenes in his films? No.
Oh, does not narrow right now. But it kind of just like fairy tales or cathedral or something like it's very much evoking these biblical old worldy concepts, I suppose, which is very much intentional, and it is a myth-rake simulation, so there you go. But I do honestly think that this is part of some kind of plan that, without spoiling anything, that Campion, it meant for the two of them to engage in this interaction. I don't think he obviously planned for her to get into a Mithraic ship and get into their hologram, but but I think, yeah, he obviously expected her to plug into something else, or this sort of programming was going to be activated in some way. But I think this particular interaction between them is, for lack of a better term, scripted.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like, it doesn't seem like Campion. Like, the way he talks, the way he's interacting with her, even the way his voice kind of, like, reacts.
Well, that's the other possibility, that there's someone else or something else at play here that has accessed the simulation, or is just able to communicate through it. There is very much a sense that there is someone else in here, and that, I mean, the computer itself has said someone else has accessed this. Who? I don't know. So I wish it didn't speak like that. And yeah, so that's the other possibility, that again you've got this mysterious third party pulling the strings, and there was no divine plan for Mother, even though Campion in her hallucinations is saying that it's all a lie. This is giving me J.J. Abrams mystery box vibes. I mean, yes, I have said that it is paying off a little bit better, and it feels a little bit more planned out and structured than, say, Lost. But yeah, I kind of feel like, where is this going? You know, what are you implying here? And it comes down to this debate of how quickly should you be solving these mysteries, because I mean, you have a show like Twin Peaks where there's a lot of really weird, surreal things happening around what is essentially one mystery. You know, the more Dale Cooper digs into that one mystery, that murder, it becomes more and more complicated. Whereas here, there's no focal mystery. It's just, here's some more. That's pretty bizarre. What the hell is that? Don't know. Just hopefully we get 5 seasons, don't get cancelled early, and you just left really frustrated and wondering where this was all going.
Yeah. There's this one particular scene, like, as a part of the sex scene, which is, it looks a lot like one of William Adolphe Bourgeois' art pieces, which is Dante and Virgil, oil on canvas. And basically it's depicting one of the scenes from the Divine Comedy, where Dante and his guide Virgil are being exposed to people like biting and feasting on each other in hell.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting ode to that. Again, Ridley.
You know, it's funny how there's like several layers of fan art going on here, because so the Divine Comedy is fan fiction of the Bible, and then this dude has done a painting of Dante and Virgil, which is fan art of fan fiction. So and yet, you know, if I do fan art, fan fiction, it's not good enough. It is not considered proper art or literature.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I kind of felt weird about this whole scene. At this point is when the series jumped the shark for me.
When did it jump the shark? You know what? Yeah, I'd probably say about here. Yeah, it almost got me, and then I
thought this was interesting, but like, no.
So, if we approach this from the perspective of, this is a planet where Satan lives, like the actual devil. This is what's going on. This is literally the Garden of Eden. So yeah, basically you could just say, whenever you're confused about anything, this is my very simple solution to watching Raised by Wolves. If you're confused about anything, the answer is Satan did it. So, you know, who is fucking around with the simulation? Satan. Who did the thing to Mother in episode 9? Satan. You know, it just solves everything. And I think that going forward, that is the way we should analyze this, with a literal Satan. You know, horns, cloven hooves, the works. That's how we're doing. I've lost my goddamn mind at this point.
May as well. I mean,
yeah. In for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre that sorry.
Let's go for it.
Yeah, like no one's had any curiosity about this planet at all. Like, why is there already settlements here? Why is there already agriculture here? Why are there messed out golem creatures trying to kill us? No one's gonna question it. We're gonna try and eat the golem creatures, but we're not actually gonna, have any questions about it, even though maybe our survival depends on it. I think my final note for this, I was going to say this minute because I'm normally reviewing things 1 minute at a time. Thankfully, I'm not doing it for this. Yes, my final note is that BFFs, Campion and Little Campion, and Paul have a bit of falling out because Campion's like, you know what? Vegan life ain't for me, man. I want to build traps. I want to feast on the blood of my enemies. Uh, so, yeah, just felt we needed to describe. I think that's basically all the major plot details.
Unfortunately, yeah, I think you're right. But to be fair, for all of the weirdness of all of this, is that like this is where we have the balance of power turn in the show, because like at the beginning it was Mother doing all the destroying, crashing the Ark, making all of these major power moves, but now there's this vulnerability, and this kind of harkens back to, again, thank you Ridley Scott, when Roy Batty faces his creator and he's like, give me more life, and his creator's like, I can't, like that's the limitation of what I can do for you. I can't give you more life. And then Roy Batty turns around and kind of gouges his eyes out. Like, this is, in a sense, the betrayer's kiss before being destroyed by her creator, because her creator is part of the human race. Then you've got Marcus here doing that.
Yeah, for once, the balance of power has shifted, and Mother was this OP, indestructible god banshee, and now the humans, the Mithraic humans specifically, have a little bit of control here, because I forgot, Mother doesn't get her eyes back ever again, or her necromancer eyes, this season. So for the rest of these next few episodes, yeah, she is basically mortal, if you want to put it in those terms.
Yeah, she's had her power taken away from her. So kind of like, I don't know, like Satan being cast out. Yeah, Satan cast out of heaven. No more power. Kind of to like go out into the desert and suffer and so on and so forth. All that biblical
There's so many
stuff.
things about thing is that the Bible doesn't actually talk about Satan or angels or anything like that all that much. A lot of our ideas of heaven and hell and what have you come from external sources. It's almost like a mythology on top of a mythology. But yeah, boggles my mind that there is some kind of adversary. There is a Lucifer, because, well, hang on. So you created Lucifer, and then he was a disappointment to you. So you didn't destroy him. Okay, maybe you can't destroy him. Maybe it's like, matter can't be truly destroyed, just become something else. Why not just take his power away? Because Satan's still powerful. He is the adversary, Oh, logic and religion don't exactly go hand in hand. What am I saying?
Yeah. We were talking about the shot of eyes in this series. It's interesting having the reflection of the Mithraic cathedral roof opening and having the cross like right there. Saying that, windows are like eyes are windows to the soul. Do you think at this point this is in a way Campion, if it is Campion, or Satan, gifting her something that her creator could not assault?
Yeah, I think, the whole point of that scene is basically congratulations, I'm going to pop your cherry, even though you didn't have a cherry in real life, but you can have a cherry in the simulation. So it is this, I mean, the way it's filmed and everything is very sort of like a Renaissance painting, something biblical. It's the ascension of Android, and it's basically her having this very human experience, or at least that's how I'm interpreting the scene. And
I remember the director's name now, Lars von Trier.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah, and that's why I feel like whether there is there's a third party at play here who has corrupted this interaction, I feel like this interaction was something that was planned by Campion. At least that's my theory.
Yeah, it's interesting because they are interrupted as well, aren't they?
By Marcus,
because it becomes a trap.
Because that's the thing is, you could potentially read it as a violation, because while she's having this sexual experience in the simulation, in the waking world, her body is literally being violated. But it's not framed that this is actually a good experience for her in the simulation. It's more of a contrast between the two experiences rather than the two feeding into each other.
I think it's really interesting, like that comes into play in the next episode as well. The difference between what happened in the simulation, Mother discovering that it was a manipulation of the Mithraics, or it could have been. It calls into question her whole experience. And then having to bear what Tempest is going through.
Yeah.
What did you think about the floating rocks thing that Mother did when she escaped from her?
Oh, yeah. She's
chains?
just too OP. She's just got too many powers. I mean, I guess it makes sense that she has these levitation abilities, so I guess she can levitate things around her.
Yeah, she's a godlike being.
Well, later, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but it is implied that maybe the Mithraic didn't even make her. She might have been made by who knows who else.
Yeah, she's stolen technology. Stolen fire from the gods. Where have we seen that before?
Yeah, it's a little, I mean, it reminds me, other than Prometheus, I mean, it's got a bit of a Mass Effect or Altered Carbon, bit of that vibe where we have this amazing technology, the Mass Effect relay stacks in Altered Carbon, and came from some superior ancient race, and we don't actually really understand this stuff, and yet we use it every single day. And I love that concept, and I don't mind that we come back to that quite often in science fiction. It's exciting, it's kind of terrifying, it's great.
Do you think it was purposeful that the explosion of the dark matter or dark neutron thing kind of looked like a sun?
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, it's after the mirror overloads.
Here we go. Oh yeah. That's a look that they went for quite specifically.
It's yeah, I don't know what to make of this soul religion. Like, obviously Ridley and Aaron Gizinski are trying to, center this pretty far away from any noticeable religions that we have, but because Mithraism, the Catholic faith, a lot of religions around the world kind of evolved from Mithraism as well. Has taken some of their practices and things like that. We're going to see a lot of similarities and symbolism throughout the series in regards to these things appearing. Do you think it really takes away from the story, or do you think it kind of adds to it? Because a lot of people didn't like that in Prometheus.
What, the use of Mithraism specifically, or just religion, or?
No, religion as part of a science fiction story.
I really dislike it. I think the problem with this story is that it's dealing with issues, and it's presenting those issues in a way that doesn't feel relevant. It doesn't feel modern. It's very much a throwback. And for that reason, I feel like this story would have been better off as pure fantasy. You could talk about I can't remember the name of that cult that shows up in Game of Thrones. They cut Cersei's hair, make her walk through the streets naked. When you are in a fantasy setting like that, I think that's a really great place to discuss religion. You can also do it in science fiction, but it's more like the Ori in Stargate. It is the Bajoran religion in Star Trek. There is a place for it, but the way this particular story, Raised by Wolves, is being told, it feels ancient. It really does feel like these are Knights Templars. These are medieval people who also just happen to have spaceships and stuff. They are not relatable people. It's a fairy tale. That's basically, and there's nothing wrong with that, where it's plot based. It is, you're not, it's not really, you're not really connecting to those characters in that way. I just think there's a real incongruity between concept and execution, very much so. It just occurs to me that Mother was doing all that floating stuff in her sleep, but her eyes, her necromancer eyes, are still in the bag around her neck. Maybe? I don't think she changed her eyes before she went into Sim.
No. Could she still have her powers without her eyes?
I guess she was overloaded. They were, playing around with the power feeding through to her body. So, yeah, maybe it's not something that she could consciously control, but if you overload her, it's going to happen.
Interesting. I think there's a lot of things that could play out for the rest of this series in regards to, like, her finding out that she can fly without the feather, so to speak.
Yes, you just have to believe.
You have to believe that you can kill without your eyes.
Don't let your dreams be memes. Should we jump along to episode 7?
Yes. At the end of this episode, like we see the Mithraics storm the camp, so to speak, kill Father, but they get back Paul, as kind of betrays, and then we see this axe-wielding psychopath Marcus take out Mother, and
Going full Viking mode again.
Yeah, but I think it's really, like, there's a really interesting moment, and that is Paul handing over the eyes to the father. It's kind of like, you little shit.
Yeah, good on him. No one android should have all that power.
Yeah. We'll see.
Especially when she's deranged. Like, even if you're on Mother's side, you probably don't want someone that unhinged who has complete mental breakdowns to also have the ability to make a head explode with screams.
Yeah. Very true. The next episode we are going to be talking about is episode 7, Cold Faces. The director is Alex Gabassi, and the writer is Karen Campbell. Now, Alex Gabassi, he's also done The Frankenstein Chronicles, ABC Murders, His Door? Hypnotized Door? I'm not sure. It's like, it looks Spanish. He's the director for that. There's a lot of stuff from overseas. So they're getting like a really interesting collection of directors and writers. Not the usual fare that you would get from American TV shows, which I think
it is actually quite interesting.
It's nice. Like, I like that. It's giving us a bit of a mix of like what we could like experience as watchers. But it's interesting how a lot of them were able to kind of adhere to Ridley Scott's style.
Yeah, and Darius Wolski. I think that this show definitely gives me vibes of both Ridley and Darius.
Yeah, and I don't even think he's like the main cinematographer either.
It seems like someone comes along and establishes that baseline look, and then throughout the rest of that show, it kind of follows that template, or it might slowly shift over time.
I think that having different directors and stuff like that, especially for TV shows, it's very common. And like in some cases, people go, "Oh yeah, I particularly liked these episodes by this director." So
yeah, there's another podcast I listen to, The Greatest Gen, where they review Star Trek, Next Generation, and DS9, and they always notice, oh yes, this director tends to have, say for example, Jonathan Frakes in The Next Generation tends to do a lot of overhead shots. He likes to film from top down. He gets more experimental with the camera. So yeah, I'm definitely, because my background is doing movies by minutes, I'm only looking at one director at a time. I'm not so sensitive to that. I'm not really sure what a specific director or cinematographer brings to a project, because it feels like, well, who's influencing who there and who's really making those choices. It's the same with most aspects of film, I guess. The synopsis for this episode is Marcus's decisions stress his relationship to his family as he struggles to maintain his clout as leader of the Mithraic. Mother is able to see Marcus for who he truly is, which threatens his power and puts Mother in a precarious situation she might not recover from. Meanwhile, Campion is faced with a choice that could result in dire consequences. So yes, Mother is tied up, and Marcus talks to her a bit, and Mother says, without a hint of irony, "You and I are a lot alike." The most cliche supervillain line ever. Oh my God. I have to say, the dialogue in this show isn't bad. It hasn't stood out as particularly good or bad. But that, really, we're a lot alike, you and I, Joker and Batman, all that.
Yeah, I think they're leaning into a lot of that. But to be fair, I did watch a lot of interviews with Ridley in general in regards to a lot of this sort of stuff when he taps into religion, when it was for Gladiator and things like that, is that there are so many similarities between the two warring sides that if they just slowed the fuck down and stopped fighting or killing each other, they'd probably find that there was more in common than there wasn't in common.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, the sentiment is fine. I get the intention behind it, but you cannot put that line in a story, because it's being done to, it's like check please, or say hello to my little friend. Like, no, stop. You can't. It's done to death. You cannot flog it any further than it's being flogged. So yeah, I think that's another way you could have worded that in a more creative way that wasn't so cliche. I think it's stating, or it's a statement that sums up everything, instead of sort of talking about that concept. So what I mean by that is, instead of saying we're all alike, you and I, they should show how are you alike. So she could actually break down specifics. Well, I mean, you care about your kids, I care about mine. You I also whatever. That way, sure, there's more words. I think you actually give those characters time to come to that understanding, not just saying you and I are a lot alike. Because if someone says that, like, imagine someone says that to you and you don't like that person, you're just like, fuck off. Where it's not helping you to come to an understanding. It almost feels like an insult, like I'm nothing like you. Whereas if she actually took that time to go, you might think of me as this complete alien creature to you, but we're really not. Here are the ways we are the same.
Yeah, she doesn't exactly have the silver tongue. She's,
No, diplomacy, she does not roll very high in that category.
Yeah. Mother,
But
we love you, but you're shocking.
yeah. Marcus also reprograms father. So because we're at the midpoint, essentially, we're at the sort of a little bit past the midpoint of this story. So 10 episode arc from about episodes 5 through 7. What we're seeing here is in the very first episode, Mother is an undefeatable monster. She just obliterates almost all the humans on the in the Mithraic colony. And everyone's just been scrambling to get a hold of this situation and get any kind of control over her. So now what we're seeing is it's slowly shifting into Marcus's favor. And not only does he have tied up, he also reprograms father. And well, it's been revealed that these androids are actually a Mithraic thing, not an atheist thing, which is weird. You'd think, wouldn't everyone have androids? Why do atheists not have androids? They have a problem with androids. Anyway.
Now that the Mithraics are in the androids' camp, Marcus sees the scalpel for the first time.
Yeah.
The one in his vision that he thought that he would stab Sue with for some reason.
Yes.
And he doesn't share anything with her and doesn't say anything. Do you think that this is this kind of like trying to keep her safe, or he's trying to still figure out what's going on?
It's weird because that does not get resolved, or at least doesn't get resolved in this season, where there seems to be very powerful imagery with this scalpel. There's some sort of connection between Mother and Marcus through the symbolism of the scalpel, but this is the last time we'll see it, at least for this week.
And even then, Marcus looks at his reflection in the mirror, and he looks like he has the helmet on, like Otho.
Yeah. And there's another scene in a later episode where he cuts his whole face off. So there seems to be this kind of body horror, sort of cutting into flesh. There's a recurring theme here, although what it means,
we're still yet to kind of know, isn't it? It's still a mystery.
Yeah, I mean, there's this element of his identity. He had to go through this plastic surgery, and there's that body horror there, that the mutilation of the flesh. And if you look into religion just in general, there's a lot about, especially in Christianity, the body of Christ and how there is the soul distinct from the flesh, and, the flesh is seen as inferior and unclean and so on and so forth. So, yeah, it could just be tapping into those biblical elements without really having anything specific to say. I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt here and say there's more to Marcus's journey than we've seen in season 1 so far.
Yeah, I'm interested to see more, but at the same time, I don't know how to feel about this particular episode, because there's a lot of things being teased, and I don't have enough information to kind of make a decision on what could be being said. For example, Mother is tied up. She kind of looks like the Vetuvian Man held in the shed. And then Marcus mumbles a couple of things, and then he says something along the lines of what's wrong with reality? Why are you tapping into the sim? Isn't reality better? And then he nearly goes and kisses her, and I'm going, what? Did he mess with? Is that him and her? What was happening? I still don't understand what's going on.
There were all these other people around, and they're obviously, he was quite a ways back. So when she was in the bed, there was Otho standing over her, a lot of people around. So he wasn't doing anything to her while she was unconscious. But I think
he did mess with the programming before she lay in there. So
yeah. I don't think he actually did anything. The whole he doesn't know who Campion is. Campion Stardust, I should say.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think he actually knows that much. I think he really did just.
He did program a feedback loop though. So was
Yeah,
that
that's
a
what he did.
feedback
So
loop
he did
for?
not go into the program. He's actually done modifications to the hardware rather than the software. That was my impression. That he basically laid down like, oh, okay, we could do something with this. Oh, she's in there sometimes for 2 hours at a time. Okay. Then he messed around with the hardware, not the actual simulation, and that's how he was able to overload a system. That was my interpretation.
Okay.
But yeah, this episode I don't think as strong as the last one. I actually thought 6 was quite exciting because you suddenly have the shift in power dynamics and there's a sense of hope. Whereas this one just kind of plods along. Paul builds some little stone buildings and like, here's the child of the prophecy and he will build the city of the future or whatever the hell. But then they're like, Campion is little Campion. He's an atheist. We must save his soul, so he has to go through this baptism ceremony, only to realize that the stone table they've erected was headstones of his deceased brothers and sisters. And that surprised me. I mean, I know they have this attitude of, oh, well, they're atheists. They don't actually have souls, so they don't need to be buried correctly. But, I mean, it just seems particularly spiteful,
I think it's even more powerful, the fact that it was Father who got the stones. Like, it wasn't even the Rakes who did that on purpose. Father had been completely programmed out of his mind to not even place any meaning to those things anymore.
I don't know. Yeah, see, we don't know if they told him specifically, oh, use those stones as well. We don't know if it was more of a case of,
they could have just said build a church, and then he just went and got stones and built a church.
Yeah, it could have been that. Or they went, oh, and use those ones too. Those are perfectly good.
I think it brings up a very interesting tidbit about religion, where when one religion is usually trying to erase another belief, they will often, place churches on previous sacred ground, take celebrations, take kind of like things that the other religions would do, like,
Christianity literally put the Christ in Christmas. It had nothing to do with Jesus until they said it was.
Yeah, that's the same with drinking wine, breaking bread. Like early Christianity also had animal sacrifice. There's so
Which is
many...
why the Seventh-day Adventist Church blows my mind, because, like, hang on, you're a vegan sect of Christianity, a religion that is notorious for, if you have a problem, slay a sheep or butcher a goat, or just get the blood and put it everywhere. Then Jesus will know. Oh, sorry if you can see that flying and it's making some noise now. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that it shows here, like, we as human beings have shown little regard for other people's beliefs, and when you do that, it can hurt. It can cause people to want to rebel. It can cause people to not want to come around to your way of thinking, because what you're doing is desecrating memories of people. So
That's thing.
Campion didn't even have a religion, but he has a respect for the dead. And that's something that Mother did encourage, and like the children said, oh yeah, sure, like Mother buried the baby, that would have been protein, but like obviously they had evolved to kind of do the things that the children wanted to do to express loss and things like that. So I feel that the androids kind of evolved to be able to accept those things, whereas the
because it's not a religious thing. It's very, we have evidence of proper burials going back 10,000 years or more before there was any sort of organized religion that we understand. So I think it is this instinctive thing that human beings want to do, but in the Mithrake's perspective, it's just like, no, but that you didn't do it right. You don't meet the standards to be worthy of the ritual. But it's interesting. So one of my stories that I'm writing does deal with the conversion from Christianity, paganism to Christianity in the what do you call it? Sorry, I'm getting distracted by that flag. In Scandinavia, basically going from the Norse, the Vikings, to modern Christianity, and it's really interesting that there was very little resistance to that assimilation. In fact, there were just a lot of times where a priest or a monk would approach these Vikings and say, my God can perform these amazing miracles, and then they would do something incredible. Like one guy, apparently he touched a spoon that had been on top of a fire, and he wasn't burned. It's pretty impressive. Okay, well, we'll forget Thor and Odin and all those guys. We'll take your God. You can also look at the Mongols. Genghis Khan? Or was it Kublai? No, it's Genghis Khan. He basically brought on soldiers from all over, all the different civilizations around the place. And he encouraged them to worship their own gods because it was almost like this insurance policy where you go, well, one of these motherfuckers is going to save our butts, right? It'll work, right? And it seemed to work for a while. The Mongols did last a hell of a long time. It was mostly infighting that destroyed them. So, I think that's another aspect that we're missing in this story is that perspective. I think it's coming at this from, for once, this story is actually coming from a more modern perspective in terms of, no, you're taking away my faith. You can't do that. Whereas historically, it's more a case of, if I do this, will I survive? Okay, good. All right, your God's great. Praise whoever they are. We're getting a little bit of that in terms of, especially kids, just in order to survive. They're just like, okay, we don't believe in a God, or yes, we do believe in a God now. It's, oh, whatever you grown up say. Don't murder us.
I think it's interesting in this episode as well. We've got the girls kind of being shoved back into the Mithraic society and practices, and they're forced to keep their place, and even someone.
Yeah, well, we're back into that patriarchal structure where I think the way mother and father raised their kids, it was very much equal. They didn't segregate by gender or anything, or even age. I think all the children basically had the same task. They filled out the same way. There was no interest in that kind of discrimination. My question is, does little Campion, he hears a voice that says, kill yourself? Is that right? Is that what that said? He hallucinates the voice.
No, it said, kill father.
Right, because I could not make it out. The subtitles were not helping me. I was like, kill what? Kill yourself? What?
Yeah, it said kill father. So
you can't kill an android. Can't kill what's not alive.
Yeah, I don't know why he did that. Because
I did not get that.
The thing wants father dead, but wants mother alive. That's what I got out of it.
I really do feel like this voice, this influence, is literally just a persona or self-insert for the writer. It's basically the creator of this story is getting involved and pushing all the characters on. That's the thing. That's why I would say it's plot-based, not character-based, because it really is, this voice is coming along and say, do this, do that. Why? Just do it, And that's where it's a little frustrating or difficult to engage, because again, it's that mythic type storytelling, which works if you are doing that kind of mythological fantasy, high fantasy type story. Whereas here, it's sort of it kind of wants to, do a bit of, we're going to do this modern character-driven science fiction. So basically, just doing, Greek myths. We're doing Snow White. We're doing Lord of the Rings. It's trying to be again, execution concept. There's a huge divide here, because I think there is absolutely potential if you went full on old school Arthurian legend type thing. You've got these spirits influencing our characters, plot base, what have you. Yeah, go for it. This is just a frustrating middle ground.
Maybe just because we're not familiar with the stories. Like I haven't gone in and done my research in regards to Mithraism and the mythologies that come with it.
Oh, I mean, I am quite familiar with these things, and that's why it's frustrating, because I know mythology, classic literature, high fantasy, that is one thing, and that is a very specific way of storytelling. But then the HBO, Game of Thrones, and television drama, that's a very different style. And it's, I'm not a professional writer, but having done a lot of writing just as a hobby, I know you've really got to go one or two ways. You cannot do both. So if you want to do, say, a Beowulf type story, where you don't know what Beowulf is really thinking or feeling. You don't get it, it's not from his perspective. You don't get a real insight. It's just Beowulf did this, then he did this. He slayed slayed Grendel's mother. He got old. He was a king. He slayed a dragon. It's sort of like da 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 da. It's plot based. It's very much this happened, then this happened, then that happened. It's not. Then Beowulf was driven by his inner daddy issues to prove himself to King what's his face of Denmark, and we don't get that. Whereas on the other hand, you do have modern character driven drama, and that's very much about our character is dealing with this inner turmoil, and they're trying to resolve that, or whatever. I think I will, to its credit, I think HBO did at least in the first few seasons, adapting Game of Thrones to kind of be that. Where if you've read Game of Thrones, it is pretty. It's a little bit both of plot and character. It is quite well balanced, but it does have that old school thing. So I guess what I'm trying to say, it's not impossible, but I think what they've done here is there's some balance issues. I think it's actually leaning too much towards that mythical storytelling, but it's science fiction. So no, don't do that. It doesn't work. It's a hat on top of a hat.
When you explain it like that, yeah, I guess so. It kind of makes sense. But
I'm coming to my TED Talk.
I don't know. Like I'm still kind of enjoying it. It's kind of like when you watch a car crash.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that you have that. I think we're really. I'm glad you have this perspective, because I think we're really balancing each other well, because there are things that I don't notice and you're pointing out, and I go, oh, well, yeah, I guess I can give it credit on these fronts. Whereas always goes off at this time. I don't. Why so many beefs? Okay. Yeah, I don't think Raised by Wolves is totally without redeeming qualities. And I mean, we've been talking about it for nearly 2 hours now. There's a lot here to delve into. There was clearly effort. There's clearly thought put into it, and there was, I mean, yeah, to their credit, they wanted to try and tell this high fantasy classic myth story in a science fiction setting. I don't think that experiment worked, but they went for it.
Yeah, well, I feel that they they're definitely leaning towards something. Personally, as a whole, I feel like season 1 was an interesting mess.
A beautiful disaster. I am glad. Well, not that we're wrapping up here for the whole season. We've still got a few more to go. But yeah, just to give my thoughts so far, I just feel like, yeah, the experience was not a waste. I'm glad I did watch it, and just to know, especially what Ridley would do with a TV project, and I did not expect so much Prometheus. There is so much Prometheus in this.
Um, our good friend Phil, also known as USS Prometheus, who hates Alien Covenant with a passion, absolutely.
I think Alien Covenant is better than Prometheus.
He absolutely refused to watch this because he felt like Ridley was touching on sacred ground, that you cannot touch Prometheus.
Oh yeah, if you do not like Alien Covenant or the Alien prequels, you're gonna hate this even more. Because I love the Alien prequels, and this was trying for me because I'm just like, this is everything that is in those movies, but worse, and also means that Ridley, with the time he spent on this show, could have been giving us a third Alien prequel. So, you know, there is that.
Yeah, I think that ship has sailed. I hate to say this because I'm the biggest.
Oh no! You not read that
prequels.
article where he said he's working on it.
Oh, he's always saying he's working on it
Yeah.
until there's an actual film. I'm not going to believe that article.
Yeah, well, that's what on my Prometheus podcast, I delved into it. It's like, he's not really saying anything specific, but that also means that no one's taken it away. Like, if Disney actually said to him a firm no, and well, that's what he would have to say. He wouldn't go around saying, oh yeah, we're still working on it, if Disney said no, fuck off, you know?
Yeah. Let's get back to the symbolism of this episode. What do you think about Mother being up in the silo looking like the Vitruvian Man, a la Leonardo da Vinci's?
I think it's more of a symbol that she's so extremely dangerous and they do not trust her, that they don't even want her feet free. They do not want her to have access to anything. They're just apart. There is no chance of her grabbing anything or getting out of this. So, yeah, I don't think there's any real artistic symbolism. To me, to make a reference like that, it has to be framed and filmed and lit in a very intentional way. And you see this a lot in Hannibal, the NBC series. You can tell that these are trying to evoke or specifically reference real pieces of art because of its framing. Whereas the way this scene is framed is very much just, no, she's dangerous. We don't trust her. That's all I get out of it.
Yeah. What do you think about Marcus's fight with himself as Caleb, mirroring that David fighting Walter in Alien Covenant?
Sorry, what did you say that you cut up a bit?
Marcus fighting himself as Caleb.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God, that went on and on. Like, what was the point? It was so frustrating. Just like, dump her down the freaking hole. End this.
I thought the choreography was good. I just want to say that mirror fighting is actually really hard. To have the timing of both of them reaching up at the same time, hitting each other's elbows, forearms at the same time. It's a big deal to try to do that, and all in one take. I'm assuming that this was all in one take.
Yeah, I'd have to have a look again. Just looking at that shot of Mother tied up again. Actually, there is a painterly quality to it, but I actually don't see the Vitruvian Man. I wish I could think of specific references, but like it is evocative, but I don't think that's a specific thing they're going for. Sorry, this is just analysis from the top of my head because you put it in my head.
Well, okay. Well, like, what if Mother is like the bull, the Mithrax slaughter?
Yeah, I was wondering if they were going to work that into the story in any way. So, I mean, that could be it. It's just
bleeding
a nice
lot.
Yeah, she's always covered in freaking gallons of white.
Yeah, this must not be a very comfortable job. biggest actors in this series.
Oh yeah, latex, and then we're gonna put all this milky white on you. Have fun.
And it's gonna smell great.
Oh yeah. Oh, the smell. If anyone's not familiar with the smell of latex, do yourself a favor and just never go near it. It's just
Yeah, next time you're near a rubber glove, just give it a sniff.
Oh no, no. So disposable gloves, they actually don't have that smell, but latex, like liquid latex, when you open it, just you can taste it.
This part where mother and father are standing on the edge of the pit, I feel like Marcus actually sees that as a prediction in Tally's drawings earlier on in the episode. Before he actually ventures out, he sees these two figures with like these like halos standing above a pit. It looks like on the edge of a cliff, but if you look closely, it's predicting the future again. So I wonder how many more of these drawings of Tally's are going to come true.
Well, if Satan is directing the course of actions in this story, then it's not even predicting the future. It is saying, this is what I'm going to make happen at a point in the future. So it's almost it's not predictive, it's rather just giving you a little tease of things that Satan or whoever has planned.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting. It's an interesting way for this episode to end as well, because we've seen Mother as such a powerful force throughout all of these episodes. And there was that change in episode 6, which is midway through, to have her kind of gain her autonomy back so quickly. That's felt good.
Yeah, I just want this bitch to die, and they keep teasing me, and they just
I'm team father more than I am team mother. But
we'll get into this in the later episodes, but I am team all the other androids because they act like androids, they look like androids, they're a lot of fun. It's great, love them.
Yes, I can't wait to talk about the android that we encounter in
Albert
episodes.
There's another one anyway.
Carl, yeah.
Carl, yeah. But
it's really funny. I'm usually creeped out by androids that look like that, but
yeah, it's a hideous design, and yet their personality shines through. So you kind of don't care. The contrast between those two things is quite delightful.
Yeah, it's enjoyable. I really like it.
So Marcus stabs himself, not with a scalpel, but I'm just wondering, it sort of adds to the whole mutilation of the flesh. He just keeps doing this, like he's got the burnt face, stabbed himself, dreamt that he stabbed his wife, dreamt that he stabbed what was the other thing that he said? Oh no, he cut his face off. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
I find it really interesting as well, like going back to the beginning of the episode, is when Mother challenges Marcus and says, like, I'm a better parent than you. That's that's a hell of a power move. Like she really got into his head at that point. He was like, fuck her, I'm gonna fucking kill her.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, these are people with very low emotional intelligence and very low negotiating skills, just fucking with each other. It's, basically, it's good fun.
And I like Sue coming at him as well with like the whole indoctrination angle. It's like, you don't want to be like the people who sent you off to war. And he's like, no, actually, if it serves a means to an end, it's okay. And it's like, he's slowly, I feel like he's slowly losing himself. He's losing his identity. He's lost his face. He loses his beliefs. And then now he's losing his morality.
That's actually a really interesting science fiction concept that we don't get into very much. So I've been watching Altered Carbon, as I've probably mentioned before, and that's in a world where the swapping of sleeves or bodies is so normalized that there's very little trauma involved. Whereas I would really love to know what happens to stuff, especially if they're forced into a body not of their own choosing, that doesn't look anything like them, if they're forced to live a life that wasn't there to begin with. Yeah, what does that do to a person psychologically? And so I think that makes Marcus one of the most compelling characters of Raised by Wolves. Just seeing if you have to live a lie every day of your life for a decade or more, if you don't look in the mirror and see your own face, what happens? That's got to do something to you.
Yeah, like it's definitely taking its toll on him mentally. I wonder how it's going to play out.
He gonna lose his goddamn mind.
Yeah. It's
Is that all of our thoughts for episode 7, Feces? Feces?
There was so much more for the previous episode. This one was pretty quick.
I found that's actually the way. I don't think it's because we talk too much about the first one up front. I think there's something about the pacing of this show that it's almost like it was made for 2-hour chunks. So that first episode, there's a lot to say. There's a lot of progress. And then that second episode seems to be more, let's sort of reflect on this, catch up, and then build onto the next thing. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know why they would have done that, but to me, that feels like that's how they've kind of structured it.
Yeah. Yeah. Overall, it's definitely like, it's interesting. At this point, when I was watching it, I definitely wanted to see where everything was going to go.
Yeah, honestly, there was never a point where I wasn't. I mean, that's the thing when you've got a mystery is you want to know where it's going. Even the same thing with Lost. Even if it's out of this frustration of, God, I'm already 5 seasons in. I may as well keep going. I need to know what this is all about. Yeah. No, it wasn't like that. But I think for Raised by Wolves, it really was a case of, each episode does kind of intrigue me. There is something interesting. That first bland. I think he could have cut that out. And that's the problem with a lot of shows these days is even though we have shorter and shorter seasons, there's a lot of pacing issues. So this year we had Star Trek Picard and Raised by Wolves, which I feel like weren't paced properly for the number of episodes that they were allotted. And it can be a huge issue. You can lose a lot and do a lot of damage if you mispace something like that.
I'm just adding in a note here about mother and father being on the edge of the pit.
Oh, yeah.
In an earlier episode that we've already recorded, we saw a recollection of Paul in the sim receiving a mouse from Marcus. And actually just behind Marcus's head is this engraving embellishment on the wall. And it has the exact same style where it's got the machine mensch headdress.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's interesting. It's like, is this their Tully's way of saying mother and father? Or angels or something?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, even at the end of like all of this season, I don't have an answer for that. I kind of like that. I do want to see more. I know you may not want to see the next season.
I don't know. Yeah, I need some time to recover. But yeah, I think a lot. I mean, it's season 1, so you can only expect it to be all set up and very little payoff. But again, to its credit, I think we got just enough that it wasn't frustrating. Because again, I think I mentioned this before we recorded, that Lost would do something like, here's a smoke monster, here's a polar bear. What does it have to do with anything? Don't know. Whereas I think everything we've been shown so far feels like it was planned out in advance. I think it does feel like there is one entity, group, whatever, as a third party intervening with the affairs and lives of the atheist and the Drake together.
Yeah, the next 2 episodes are gonna fucking blow your mind. And I honestly thought at that point, I was like, wow, this series cannot get any crazier.
Oh no!
After watching
3,
after watching 6, and then
it's buck wild. It is absolutely off the funking chain, and can't wait to talk about it next week, I guess.
Yeah, and I like the fact that we've got a few weeks ahead of time to kind of do our research and see all of these things that are happening. I can kind of appreciate all of these things that are going down as well, and we're going to see what happens to Marcus after him stabbing himself in the next episode.
Nothing good.
No, but he totally deserved it after taking that axe to Mother. Does he really?
I'm Team Marcus all the way.
This episode was director of photography was Ross Emery, so I'm just gonna have to look him up.
Don't know why I just expect you to be like, this episode was brought to you by the letter E. Everything is fucked.
The number S, the letter S for soul.
Yes, praise soul.
And I don't think there's a number for vanilla sex. But let's just say 69.
The sex number.
Sorry, everyone. We've just gone a bit silly because after watching episode 10, we just...
What is meaning anymore? I don't know. Just... I have watched 5 Michael Bay Transformers movies in a row just a couple of weeks ago. Now you make me watch this, and it's just... I don't really understand cause and effect anymore. I don't understand why anything happens. Why do buttons exist? You ever think about that? Sometimes you're just putting your clothes on, you're like, why do we have buttons? You know? Why not just explosions on everything? Because that's how Michael Bay answered every problem.
Well, let's answer it the same way that we're going to answer this show all the time. It was the devil.
It was Satan. Yeah.
It was Satan. It was Satan's fault.
Yeah, every time I open my fridge, like, I'm running out of milk. Oh, it must have been Satan. There you go.
I do like the feeling of the next 2 episodes that we will be reviewing, though. Are we
doing 8, 9, 10 at once, or are we
8,
doing
9, and 10? We're doing Mass. We're doing
Smash it out.
Umbilical, and we're also doing the beginning. So I really like the progression of Hunter's character.
Actually, yeah, he gets a bit of a character arc
with Father here, because frankly, I thought he was a bit of a bitch.
He's a bitch, yeah.
I didn't like him. And the whole thing in Umbilical, crazy, and episode 10, I don't know whether that's the way I would end any season of anything.
That's not how I would end a story. Certainly, no.
How about you do a spoiler without context? Can you say something?
Reverse Milburn from Prometheus.
Welcome to Planet Cheese.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for joining us on our little Raised by Wolves analysis. I'm sorry this episode kind of delved into silliness, but that's where I am right now with the lockdown and the pandemic. And
this is where I'm at with Raised by Wolves and Transformers research.
You'll be able to find links to Travian Designs on the blog. Yeah. I've put in a whole bunch of screenshots. There's not going to be much text in this one because I feel like a lot of the symbolism is visual, but you get a lot of the discussion about the symbolism in the video anyway. So you can watch the video for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Colson signing off.
And this is Mother of Studio Yutani signing off.